To the rest of the universe, Earth is not a home. It is a Class 10 death world. It is a planet made of crushing gravity, toxic oxygen, and deadly solar radiation. When the mighty Galactic Council finally decided to visit, they were terrified. They stepped off their ships encased in massive, 50-ton power armor, looking like walking tanks just to survive the air. They expected to find humans hiding in bunkers, fighting for every breath. Instead, they found Sergeant Mike. He wasn't wearing a pressure suit. He wasn't wearing a helmet. He was walking toward them in a cotton t-shirt and shorts, holding a cold drink. That was the moment the aliens realized the terrifying truth: humans don't survive Earth because they are lucky. They survive because they are the monsters. The massive silver spaceship descended slowly through the white clouds of Earth. It was the flagship of the Galactic Council, a vessel built to survive the harshest environments in the universe. But inside the ship, the mood was not brave. The alien crew was terrified. On their main computer screens, red warning lights flashed constantly. The data described Earth as a Class 10 death world. The atmosphere was full of toxic oxygen. The gravity was heavy enough to crush bones. The sun emitted dangerous radiation. To the aliens, landing here was a suicide mission. Commander Xylar stood by the airlock door. He was not taking any chances. He was encased in a Class 5 power suit. It looked more like a walking tank than a piece of clothing. The suit had 3 layers of titanium armor, an internal heating system, and a heavy gravity stabilizer. Without this machine, Xylar believed he would die in seconds. He checked his oxygen supply and nodded to his team. The heavy ramp of the ship lowered with a loud mechanical hiss, hitting the green grass of the landing zone. Xylar took his first step onto the planet. Thud. The ground shook under the weight of his armor. His suit's engines whined loudly as they fought against Earth's crushing gravity. Even with the mechanical assistance, lifting his leg felt like lifting a boulder. He scanned the horizon with his high-tech sensors. He expected to see a desolate wasteland. He expected to see humans hiding in reinforced bunkers to escape the harsh elements. He raised his plasma shield, ready for an attack from the terrifying natives of this world. Suddenly, his motion tracker beeped. A single figure was approaching the ship from the nearby military base. Xylar zoomed in with his helmet camera, and his heart almost stopped beating. It was a human male. But there was something wrong. The human was not wearing a power suit. He was not even wearing a helmet. He was walking directly in the toxic, open air. The human, who was Sergeant Mike, strolled casually across the field. He was wearing a simple white t-shirt that said, "I love New York," and a pair of blue shorts. Xylar panicked inside his cockpit. The computer screamed warnings about radiation exposure, but the human just looked relaxed. Mike was not holding a weapon, he was holding a cold can of soda. Condensation dripped from the can, sizzling in the heat. To the alien commander, this was madness. He was sweating inside a multi-million credit survival suit, struggling to stand up. Meanwhile, the human was whistling a happy tune, exposing his soft skin to the deadly sun and wind. Sergeant Mike stopped a few feet away, took a sip of his drink, and waved a hand. The most powerful alien warrior in the galaxy stood frozen in fear, completely baffled by a man in a cotton shirt. The group began the tour of the military base, but it was not a pleasant walk for the visitors. For Commander Xylar and his alien crew, every meter was a struggle. Earth's gravity was much stronger than the gravity on their home planets. It felt like invisible weights were pulling them down into the dirt. The engines in Xylar's power suit whined loudly, making a straining noise like a dying machine. Whir clank. Whir clank. Every time he lifted a foot, his suit used a massive amount of battery power. The aliens were breathing hard inside their helmets, and their dashboard monitors flashed yellow warnings about engine overheating. They felt like they were walking on the bottom of a deep, heavy ocean. Beside them, Sergeant Mike was a terrifying mystery. He did not have a mechanical suit. He did not have metal supports on his legs. Yet, he was walking faster than the machines. He was not struggling at all. In fact, he seemed to bounce slightly with every step. Xylar watched the human with wide eyes. His onboard computer analyzed Mike's body. The scanner reported that to move so easily in this crushing gravity, the human's bones must be made of solid diamond and his muscles must be as strong as steel cables. Xylar looked at Mike's legs. They looked soft and normal, but the alien knew they must be hiding immense biological power. The aliens were scared that Mike might accidentally kick them and shatter their armor. The tension reached its peak when the group stopped near the barracks. Mike reached into his pocket to grab his security badge, but his hand slipped. A small plastic pen fell out of his pocket and hit the concrete with a sharp sound. The aliens instantly froze in panic. In high-gravity worlds, if you drop something, it is gone. Bending down is too dangerous. If a being bends over, the gravity might crush their spine or they might fall and never get up. Xylar prepared to call his ship to send a magnetic drone to pick up the pen. He wanted to save the human from breaking his back. But before Xylar could speak, the impossible happened. Mike did not call for help. He did not brace himself against a wall. In one smooth and casual motion, he bent his knees, reached down, grabbed the pen, and stood back up. The entire action took less than 1 second. Xylar's jaw dropped. His suit computer calculated the force required to lift a body against Earth's gravity that quickly. The numbers were off the charts. Mike had just performed a physical feat that would have stalled a tank engine, and he didn't even grunt. He just spun the pen in his fingers and kept walking. The aliens looked at each other in horror, realizing that these humans were strong enough to fight gravity itself. The tour continued through a green park on the edge of the military base. To Sergeant Mike, it was a beautiful afternoon with a gentle breeze blowing through the trees. But to Commander Xylar and his team, this was a nightmare jungle. The plants looked wild and uncontrolled. The aliens kept their hands near their holstered plasma cannons, scanning every shadow for danger. Suddenly, the tactical sensors inside Xylar's helmet turned bright red. A loud alarm blared directly into his ears, warning, apex predator detected. The alien squad instantly stopped moving. They slammed their armored boots into the dirt and formed a tight defensive circle, aiming their weapons at a shaking bush nearby. The bush exploded with movement. A four-legged beast burst out from the leaves, running with terrifying speed. To the aliens, it was a monster of pure muscle and fur. It had a long snout filled with razor-sharp white fangs, and it made a loud, barking roar that shook the sensors of their suits. The creature was a golden retriever, but the aliens did not know what a dog was. Their database identified it as a Class 4 hunter-killer. The beast ignored the aliens in their metal shells and locked its eyes on the soft, unprotected human. It charged straight at Sergeant Mike, closing the distance in seconds. Xylar wanted to fire his weapon, but the creature was moving too fast. He yelled a warning, but he knew it was too late. The beast leaped into the air, aiming for the human's chest. The aliens braced themselves for a gruesome scene. They expected the monster to tear the human apart. Xylar watched in horror as the heavy animal collided with Mike, knocking him backward slightly. The commander closed his eyes, unable to watch the inevitable violence. He assumed the human's fragile neck would be snapped by the force of the attack. However, the sound of screaming never came. Instead, Xylar heard a strange, rhythmic noise, laughter. He opened his eyes and gasped. The monster was not eating Sergeant Mike, it was covering his face with wet saliva. The alien computer analyzed the liquid and warned that it contained dangerous bacteria, but Mike did not seem to care. The human was wrestling with the beast, rubbing its fur and scratching behind its ears. "Who is a good boy?" Mike asked the predator. The dog wagged its tail so hard it thumped against Mike's leg like a club. The aliens slowly lowered their weapons, completely confused. They looked at each other with deep fear. They realized that humans were not just strong, they were crazy enough to tame the wildest monsters of their world and keep them as pets. After the terrifying encounter with the wild beast, the group stopped for a refueling break. The sun was high in the sky, and the heat was rising. Commander Xylar and his crew did not dare to remove their heavy helmets. Exposing their faces to the Earth's atmosphere would be fatal. Instead, they connected small, sterile tubes to ports on their chest armor to suck up a tasteless gray nutrient paste. While they ate their safe, scientifically balanced food, they watched Sergeant Mike with great concern. The human sat comfortably on a wooden bench and opened a plastic lunchbox. He pulled out a large sandwich stacked high with meat and cheese. Then, he retrieved a small glass bottle filled with a bright red liquid. He shook the bottle and poured the red sauce generously over his food. Commander Xylar's suit scanner immediately locked onto the red substance. The computer processed the chemical composition and flashed a purple warning light on his visor. Danger, potent neurotoxin detected. The chemical was capsaicin. In the rest of the civilized galaxy, this substance was strictly regulated and used only in military-grade gas grenades to incapacitate enemies. Xylar stepped back in alarm. He thought the human was making a mistake. He wanted to shout a warning, but it was too late. Mike took a massive bite of the poison-covered sandwich. The aliens watched in stunned silence, waiting for the human's mouth to blister or his throat to close up. Instead, Mike just chewed happily. A small bead of sweat appeared on his forehead, and he smiled. "Good stuff," he mumbled. The aliens were sickened. They realized this species actually enjoyed the sensation of chemical burns. The horror was not over yet. Mike reached for a plastic bottle containing a dark, black liquid. He twisted the cap, and a loud hiss sound erupted as gas escaped from the container. Xylar's sensors analyzed the gas, carbon dioxide. The liquid was a bubbling mixture of sugar and carbonic acid. It was a fluid strong enough to clean rust off a spaceship hull. Xylar watched in disbelief as Mike lifted the corrosive acid to his lips and drank half the bottle in one go. The liquid fizzed and popped as it went down his throat. The aliens winced, imagining the acid dissolving the human's internal organs. They waited for Mike to fall to the ground in agony. They expected his stomach to rupture. But once again, the human defied all logic. Mike simply patted his chest, leaned back, and let out a loud, thunderous burp. Belch. The sound echoed across the quiet park. To the aliens, this was not rude, it was the sound of a biological nuclear reactor venting dangerous gas. Xylar looked at his trembling crew. They were terrified. They realized that human stomachs were not made of soft biological tissue. They were clearly biofurnaces capable of processing lethal poisons. A species that drank acid and ate neurotoxins for lunch was a species that could never be defeated. The peaceful afternoon did not last long. Without warning, the bright blue sky began to turn a bruised, angry shade of gray. Dark clouds rolled over the military base like a thick blanket, blocking out the sun. The temperature dropped rapidly, triggering the thermal heaters inside the aliens' power suits. Suddenly, a deafening sound ripped through the air. Boom! A crack of thunder shook the ground beneath their metal feet. Commander Xylar crouched down, his heart racing. To him, that sound was unmistakable. It sounded exactly like heavy orbital artillery fire. He screamed for his squad to take cover, convinced that the planet itself was launching an attack on them. But before they could run, the sky opened up, and the bombardment began. It was not missiles that fell, but water. However, for the Galactic Council, a rainstorm on Earth was a terrifying event. The water droplets fell from thousands of feet in the air. By the time they hit the ground, they were moving fast enough to sting. To the aliens, it sounded like machine gun fire hitting their titanium armor. Ping ping ping. The noise was deafening inside their helmets. The water was cold and relentless, pouring over their sensors and blinding their cameras. The ground, which had been hard concrete and dirt, instantly turned into a thick, sticky trap of mud. The heavy aliens struggled to lift their feet. One of the crew members, Lieutenant Glocks, took a wrong step. His heavy legs sank deep into the soft earth. Glocks panicked. He revved his suit's engine to maximum power, but the earth mud was like glue. The more he struggled, the deeper he sank. The water rose around his metal waist. His suit's electronics began to spark and fizzle as the water seeped into the joints. "I am trapped," Glocks shouted over the radio. "The planetary slime is consuming me." Commander Xylar looked on in despair. He could not reach his comrade without getting stuck himself. They watched helplessly, believing that Glocks was about to be swallowed by the hostile terrain. They prepared themselves to mourn his death. Then, they saw a flash of movement. Sergeant Mike ran out from a nearby shelter. He was not wearing a raincoat. He was not carrying a shield. He ran straight into the storm with his bare skin exposed to the falling water bullets. The alien screamed, expecting the water to tear his soft flesh apart. Instead, Mike splashed through the puddles, his sneakers getting soaked. He reached the sinking alien and grabbed the metal arm of the power suit. With a grunt of effort, Mike planted his feet in the slippery mud and pulled. His muscles bunched up, and with a loud sucking sound, schluck, he ripped the 500-pound alien free from the mud. Mike dragged Glocks to the safety of the pavement. He stood there, completely drenched, water dripping from his nose. He wiped his face casually and shouted over the thunder, "It's just a little sprinkle, guys. No big deal." Xylar stared at the human, terrified by a creature that could walk through an artillery storm without a scratch. The rainstorm finally stopped, but the alien delegation had seen enough. Commander Xylar did not wait for a farewell ceremony or a diplomatic handshake. He ordered an immediate retreat. The squad of aliens marched back toward their silver spaceship as fast as their heavy mechanical legs could carry them. They looked like terrified children running from a haunted house. When the heavy airlock ramp finally hissed shut behind them, sealing out Earth's toxic atmosphere, the entire crew collapsed in relief. They were finally safe. They were back in a controlled environment with artificial gravity and filtered, sterile air. Xylar rushed to the command bridge, still wearing his dented and muddy armor. He slammed his metal fist onto the large red launch button. The ship's engines roared to life, shaking violently as they fought to break free from Earth's crushing gravity well. Once the ship reached the silence and safety of deep space, Commander Xylar sat down to record his official findings for the Galactic Council. He looked into the camera lens with a face full of exhaustion and trauma. He took a deep breath and began to speak. "Mission report, invasion of Earth is cancelled immediately," he stated firmly. He pulled up the data charts on the main screen, showing the terrifying statistics of the planet. "This world is a death trap. The air is corrosive. The gravity destroys machinery. The water falls from the sky like artillery fire. But the planet itself is not the biggest threat," Xylar whispered, his voice trembling. "The natives, the humans, they are the true monsters of the universe." He continued his report, his eyes wide with fear. "We need Class 5 power armor just to survive there for 1 hour. The humans wear thin pieces of cotton. They do not need armor because they are the biological armor. Their bones are as hard as diamonds to withstand the gravity. Their stomachs are chemical reactors that dissolve poison for energy. They tame apex predators and call them good boys. They treat lethal storms like a minor inconvenience." Xylar typed a command into the navigation computer, marking the solar system with a bright red skull icon. He labeled it a forbidden zone. He knew that if these humans ever decided to leave their world and travel to the stars, the rest of the galaxy would be doomed. No laser shield could stop a creature that drank acid for lunch. As the ship prepared to jump into hyperspace, Xylar took one last look at the rear monitor. The high-powered camera zoomed in on the landing zone below. Sergeant Mike was still standing there in the middle of the field. He was small, soft, and completely unprotected against the elements. He held his empty soda bottle in one hand and waved at the sky with a friendly smile. To the human, it was a polite goodbye. But to the alien commander, it looked like a predator taunting its prey. Xylar shivered, turned off the screen, and the ship vanished into the stars, never to return to the planet of the monsters.